If I can get the mic up the right way here. It's Ritualizing Life or Ritualizing Death. A look at the interrelationships between marriage, same-sex blessings, women's ordination, and GLBT ordination. Before I begin my prepared remarks, I have to say, I never, in my wildest imaginings, thought that I would be to the right of Bob Benny. This aging process, something's going on. And I'd also want to say a word in honor of all of those folks who over the years have come to talk to me when I was both a campus pastor and a seminary pastor, who had lived in earlier times in homoerotic relationships and now had to keep them hidden or they would not be accepted by the culture that they were in within the church. So I speak today in honor of those people until the day comes when they can speak publicly in the ELCA. When I ask a pastor, any pastor, what they would prefer to do, a wedding or a funeral, the almost unanimous response is, a funeral, of course. No wedding coordinators, no matching tangerine bridesmaids' gowns, no swooping soloists, no 10-gallon hats, no melting unity candles, no mother of the bride, and even more so, no pouting mother of the groom, no Wagnerian overtones, no diaper-wearing ring bearers, and most of all, no folks who could care less about the life of fidelity that our Lord calls us to lead. Give me a good funeral any day, because at a funeral there is just one thing to be said, and everybody knows they need to hear it. Weddings, however, are the centerpiece of our culture. Even in these once rebellious colonies, royal weddings have a great following. Celebrity weddings set the trend for what to wear, and if a celebrity doesn't want the paparazzi there to spread the details of the pâté among the peasants, heaven help them. Helicopters will fly, and zoom lenses will shudder. There's money to be made, and fantasy to be imitated. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, this wedding stuff. And whether one understands it sacramentally or as a matter of civic order or somewhere in between, it's pretty hard not to get caught up in all the frou-frou. In the most ancient of times, marriage was often by capture. In the days of Jesus, it was most likely by purchase. And in the aftermath of the romanticizing tendencies of the 12th century, it is now, in the West, said to be a matter of mutual consent. Sure, folks have just lived together without the aid of a preacher's blessing, and certainly folks have copulated together without the aid of a preacher's blessing. But in spite of those actions, most folks have sought a ritual to express something about this union that they could find no other way to express. That's the thing about ritualizing, whether in straightforward vows and an exchange of rings in the judge's chambers, or with 12 blushing bridesmaids and 400 well-heeled guests. People have sought to say through their ritualizing what they could not say in any other way. Symbols, and besides everything else they are, weddings function as major symbols in a culture. Symbols reflect our understanding of material reality, as well as point beyond themselves to meanings rich, deep, and often ultimate. Rituals call us to pay attention, and by their repetition, they draw us ever again into new depths of meaning. Such public patterning is a source of power which is never neutral. What we learn from weddings is that in the beginning, God made them male and female, and that procreation, delight, complementarity, and community are rolled into this pairing. We find ways through the symbolic acts of the marriage rite to express what we hope this union to be and to become. These symbolic acts, like many symbolic acts, slowly change as what we're seeking to express changes. There is no longer a provision in the LBW for the ancient question, who gives this woman to be with this man? I once told a wedding coordinator that those words would not come out of my mouth. I say beginning to change because how many young brides still have their fathers escort them down the aisle, place their hand on their intendant's arm after the two men have shaken hands? The ritualized, deeply patterned gestures speak the question in a far more authoritative voice than the words could have ever done. Marriage is a classic rite of passage, and whether as an exchange of property or an expression of consent, and regardless of how we speak of it, either as a sacrament or as a civil estate, getting married is the clearest way our society knows to mark the completion of the transition from childhood to adulthood. Something changes in the way we are perceived by society, and hopefully something changes in the way we live and where we place our energies. At the onset of adolescence, there are tribal and often ecclesiastical rites to mark the maturing body and mind. But marriage, which signifies the end of adolescence, marks one as an adult in a way that nothing else can. Therefore, a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife. Such announcements are both prescriptive and descriptive, as the intention of the Creator in making one to be that particular woman or that particular man is sealed. Often when I work with couples in premarital counseling, I will say to them that when God created Adam and Eve, we can speak about those great mythological archetypal folks. When God created Adam and Eve, he had the two of you in mind. Marriage is a rite that sanctifies life. That is, it not only announces the goodness of the Creator's intentions, it gives us a means to live out his delight. Yet even as this rite of passage sanctifies life, the Church has retained many of the ancient pagan customs for this rite. In terms of ritual studies, we would call this traditionalization, and it's a powerful tool to make things legitimate. It connects what's currently happening to what happens in the past so that people find it authentic and satisfying. So the Church retains ancient customs, everything from rings on the fourth finger, bridal veils, floral crowns, to wedding banquets and the carrying of the bride over the threshold. And the Church has also held differing rationales as for how it is to function and or regulate this rite, as well as its ecclesiastical and societal consequences. Unfortunately, regardless of what we as a church think, people who have no intention of living as devoted disciples or participating in the ongoing life of a particular ecclesiastical community rent our sanctuaries for their rituals. In such instances, marriage is not the place to celebrate the fidelity of God toward us in our lifelong fidelity toward each other, as people now come to ritualize their love for each other, and the stained glass windows make such a nice backdrop. Heaven forbid if the paraments should clash with the bridesmaids' gowns.